All right. Thank you all for tuning in to another episode of the Black Ronin Japan series, courtesy of YouTube. First and foremost, we just want to give a shout out to our subscribers. Thanks for listening in. Thank you for tuning in. Truly appreciate the love and support. また、日本の視聴者を YouTube のブラックローディンシリーズに歓迎します。どうもありがとうございました。Hope you guys are doing well tonight or this morning, depending on where you are in the planet, on the world. There's a lot going on. Definitely a lot going on. Once again, I want to send a special thank you to Soul Provider Speaks. I recently did an interview with him on his channel over there on Soul Provider Speaks, and it was a really good interview. There were a lot of brothers that was in the chat who were talking about their experiences in Japan. A lot of them went there through the military and whatnot, and I was glad to hear that. So I told them in the interview that if they would like for me and my co-host Kirigakure Jones, who's in the background, if they ever want us to interview them on our show, definitely send me an email because we would like to get their experiences and learn more of how life was for them when they lived in the land of the rising sun. So for those of you who don't know, this is my email address, sigmajones1 at gmail.com. Again, that's sigmajones1 at gmail.com. Definitely feel free to send me your information as far as your time you spent in Japan and some of your experiences. And if everything lines up, we definitely like to bring you on so we can hear more about your experiences. The thing for me is I want guys to hear other experiences from brothers who have been to Japan, which is kind of funny because I've heard about experiences from other brothers like Kirigakure Jones before I finally took my trip to Japan, and it's only fitting that I would want to do the same. You know, share my experiences, Kirigakure's experiences, and even experiences from other brothers. So that way, any newcomer that comes in and he's interested in learning more about Japan, you've come to the right place. So again, that's my email address. Feel free to hit me up and we will definitely go forth from there. Just going to look through the chat real quick. Shout out to DK Phantom. Good to see you, sir. And salute to Brother Dan. So with that being stated, let's bring up our co-host, none other than the shinobi of this clan, Mr. Kirigakure Jones. よろしくお願いします。
ありがとうございます。もしもし、聞こえますか？
はいはい。
All right.
Well, I like that new avatar you got.
Yeah, I found some pretty dope artwork out there. I've been doing some things, as doing some things behind the scenes, you know what I'm saying? And, part of the thing was to, pull some different works of art together. And I saw this avatar and I was like, man, this is pretty him right here. So I had to put him on.
Nice. Well, it definitely suits your persona. I definitely say if I can look at that avatar, be like, yeah, that's a brother who knows the ways of the shinobi. So,
And the thing is, it's like begging, because I found this. I think it's a brother that does just like random characters, but I mean, the story has to be told. You know what I'm saying? And it's a pleasure being on the program. Appreciate you having me on. There's just a lot, like you mentioned, there's a lot happening in the universe right now, and I'm just here to be a part of it.
no doubt, man, no doubt. Definitely is a lot more that's going to be coming down the pipe for this particular series. There's a lot of brothers that are spreading the word about the Black Ronin series and all, which is phenomenal. I didn't think it would start to grow that quickly, but it's definitely catching the attention of a few brothers out there who's interested in learning more and hearing about experiences from brothers who've been to Japan and whatnot. So yeah, I think we are definitely on to something big and greater beyond our time.
It's interesting because we have these like you mentioned, having these experiences. I personally think that you travel, you meet people, you talk to people, but it's all for a greater purpose. So I feel like, now, we have powers we can draw on. We've got people, we've got the networks, we've got the connects, to really make stuff happen. I'm just very, I guess kind of giddy because I just see a lot of brothers, doing their thing, right? Reaching out for their best lives and their best potential. So, that's what I'm about.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, before we get to the meat of this
The
particular
video.
of the video, there was some news that came down the pipe that I found very interesting, and it just highlights, the wonders of Japan. And I was actually sent this information probably between early this month, if not late last month. But and you probably have heard it too, good sir. So apparently, down in Yokohama, which is considered part of Tokyo, there is a museum that is going to be dedicated to Gundam. And
Oh, yeah.
yeah, and this particular museum is going to do something that has never been done before until now, and that is create a life-size movable Gundam. And I said to myself, okay, we definitely got to show this to the audience because this highlights the spontaneousness when it comes down to Japan. And really, it just kind of highlights things where, you know, things that was just, on piece of paper, just cartoons, animation, and whatnot. It's now slowly started to become reality. And so there's a video that I found of this particular um, machine that's going on, and like I
Oh, here
said,
we go.
it is definitely something to watch. So without further ado, I'll let you guys have a look at it right now.
I know what. That's definitely on my list to go see next time I'm in Japan land.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat too. It's like once I touch down in Tokyo, that is a must see when I go to Yokohama. Like,
Like you mentioned, only in Japan. And then when you're done with that, you can stop by. I think it's the Lamen Museum is there too.
yep, the Rami Museum is down there. There's even an arcade. I forgot what it's called. It's like an underground arcade. It's very popular in Yokohama, and like I said, it's only a few miles outside of central Tokyo, so it's literally like within the Kanto region. But just seeing that, it's just like, wow. It won't be long until Japan is using actual Gundams, or just these giant machines that, you know, within our generation and all, something that we can only imagine just from watching anime. And all of a sudden now it's starting, these mechas are starting to come to life. It's amazing.
Well, it's funny you should say that because I think this is going to dovetail nicely with today's topic. So the, the belief is in most quarters, of course, there's always disagreement, but for the most part, things, objects have spirits.
Mm-hmm.
So, when I first started visiting Japan, I didn't quite get why the obsession with like Gundam and um, all these different kind of mecha type of things. But then I finally figured out. I said, well, it's because the different aspects of existence have spirits. They have souls attached to them.
Mm-hmm.
So like Japan is one of those places where like we'd be rolling over to my in-laws' house, and they would have GPS. They would have like all this high technology, and like in America, it was like, you had to use like a compass and a star chart to get anywhere. This is, way back before GPS really took off. But um, yeah, I always have noticed that, if there's any place where mechas will actually be used for, like Ace 3567 says, hopefully not for war, but you never know. It's going to be Japan. They're going to be the first to come out with it.
Absolutely. And a salute to Aizen Sama. He said he was going to start watching this series and everything. So salute to him as well. But it's something you mentioned about spirits being put in these machines, and it definitely ties in with tonight's topic. So in Japan, they actually have a saying called sukumogami, and what that means is if a person use a tool long enough, or if that tool is utilized for long periods of time, that tool start to inhabit spirits within itself. And so um, they talk about how there's a lot of old sacred materials, I would say, depending on tools and whatnot from ancient past, that in Japan they believe, if you were to touch these tools or these materials, you will actually call upon the spirits of those who have used it in the past. So yeah, that's definitely an interesting way of looking at these things.
Like Nintendo. I forget the exact translation, but I think it's like the meeting of heaven and earth, something like that,
Mm-hmm.
or the heavenly way. I have to look it up again, but um, the whole Japanese aesthetic is the object has spirit, it has soul. It's very much like our concept of, we've got soul. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
um, like a lot of these Japanese companies, they will have specific uh, Shinto ceremonies. Like if they're going to come out with a new product, or if they're going to develop like a new building, new facility, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
They'll have ceremonies dedicated to that, and that makes a lot of sense. Like, my mother, God rest her soul, she's been gone for a couple of years now, but I still have in Japan they have what's called a kamiza, which is
Mm-hmm.
basically your sacred space, for your prayers and your meditation and stuff like that. So on my home kamiza, I have my mother's glasses. and these were the
Mm.
glasses that she read with and everything else. And I dare not throw it away. So it's just there, you know. So I kind of think about when I'm gone, what objects like my swords, will my kids hold on to, right? Because that kind of goes to that whole aesthetic of, we hear it and it sounds like a cliche, but for the samurai, especially, well, samurai-san, uh,
Mm.
your sword and your spirit are inseparable. It's kind of like that whole idea of, your body and the weapon are one.
Very true, very true. And you know, to me that just kind of speaks to the whole aesthetics, as you will, about Japan. How, stuff that, for the regular run of the mill type of society, something as simply as, you know, your dad's calculator or your mom's cooking utensils. For us, they, may invoke some sense of, remembrance and all if they're long gone. But in Japan, they hold those type of memories in high regard. And like you said, um, they feel that when you use those tools long enough and a person's associated with those type of tools and materials, they feel like their spirit is actually part of those materials and tools. And so for them, they definitely keep those in high regard. And like you said, the mere fact that you would, some of these companies, Japanese companies, will hold ceremonies, especially in the Shinto religion, to, inhibit good luck and put in good spirits within, their materials or business. It definitely speaks a lot to what what the Japanese ways of thinking, especially spirituality, is all about. And Isaac Sama says, so it's kind of like Zanpakuto and Bleach. The weapon is actually a part of them. Exactly. It's definitely, that's where that idea in Bleach has come about.
Exactly. And if we think about, what is matter, right? So you've got plasma, you've got gas, you have solids, you have liquids. But really, if you hold your sword, then that is basically light. The atoms and the molecules are tight, packed. They're packed together tightly, and they form in such a way as it creates an object known as sword. But really, what you're holding is light. It's just a very compact version of it. So, who's to say when we talk about things like, quantum physics and things of that nature,
Mm-hmm.
vibration and energies and all that kind of stuff? Who's to say that, your light bleeds into this particular object, especially over long periods of time? I heard an interesting fact that basically every atom in our bodies is basically replaced every 7 years. So, even in our language, right, the English language, I feel good about this, good karma, good spirits. Um, he has a good vibe about this. We have these kind of these thoughts and these ideas, but I just think that like pretty much everything else in Japan, it gets taken to like the razor sharp edge. It's taken to the ultimate fulfillment. And I think that's why you see, let's see, what did they just build? Like Japan just built like this huge submarine that's like lithium batteries.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
instead of the diesel, they have the lithium or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's supposed to be like super quiet and all these kind of things. It's like, bro, Mitsubishi Heavy Industries is not to be funked with.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that now dove, dovetails into the meat of this particular episode. So it is the month of October, and I figured this would be something a little bit light, to kind of be in, pun intended, the spirits of whatnot. Is interesting because so usually for European standards, they see the month of or the season of fall as that thin line where the spiritual world can now connect to the living world. Whereas in Japan is actually a little bit different. In Japan's culture is actually the summer months that they believe from July up until late September that the the line between the spiritual world and the living world is pretty thin. And so during that season, during the summer, the Japanese are definitely more in tune with what goes on as far as like with ghosts and a lot of things that they take into considerations. Just like we talk about with Tsukumogami and parts of the Shinto religion. But one thing I have to say, when you look up some of the folklore of the Japanese beliefs and even some of their history behind it, um, it definitely rivals that of other nations like Europe or even America in regards to how they see things spiritually. All right, sorry for that. But yeah, and so with this particular episode, I figured we kind of look at some areas in Japan that a lot of them kind of see as having some sort of stigma to it.
Hmm.
And that's because with them, they take things from the spiritual world very seriously. They
Hmm.
they look at it as far of if something tragic has happened to this particular area, pay your due respects, or else you may get the wrath, feel the wrath of whatever entity or some energy that lives there. And so in this particular episode, we're actually going to look at two different lists. The first list is actually going to show some of the top haunted places in Japan, and then the second list will look at top haunted places specifically in Tokyo.
Hmm.
So some of these places will actually appear on both of these lists, but going through them, it's an interesting read, and I think for some of them you might even find some connections as far as like some animes that might utilize this area for inspirations and all, or just the mere fact that there's some travelers like myself who have been to one of these places and may have seen or experienced something there. So I definitely feel like this would be a perfect opportunity to kind of talk about those things.
Plus, Yashahime is kicked off, so I know we've
Oh yeah.
had some conversations about that behind the scenes. And I think what's really fascinating is Japan opens a window into. Um, I think many cultures had a very similar outlook, but for a variety of reasons, they've kind of shut the door on that kind of thinking, especially in Western societies. Western society tends to have a very Newtonian view, very, post Enlightenment type of view. And I'm not here to like trash the Enlightenment. I personally feel like that there are no coincidences. So, you had, the Enlightenment, you had the scientific method, you had, criticism and all that kind of stuff. And, obviously we have great achievements and inventions and things of that nature as a result. So I'm not anti-modern in a lot of respects. But here lately, I've been trying to get out of that kind of materialistic thinking and
Mm,
trying to be aware of um, kind of the more spiritual side of things. Because I think that if you ignore it, it's like we talked about during the Bushido conversation, the shinobi strive for wholeness. So when we talk about things like logic or emotion or sensation, the one thing I think that really gets overlooked a lot is intuition, which is, kind of that doorway to um, the spirit world, if you will. That really gets
mm-hmm.
neglected, and that's a dangerous thing, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, I couldn't agree more. And it's something you mentioned because I look at the ways of life here in America and compare it to some of the ways of life in Japan. Um, you look at both of these two countries, and you look at America. In the eyes of the world, it's still considered a young country. Um, you know, kind of like a baby in a way. And when I look at the interactions amongst people here in America, they definitely focus more on the here and now. And they take little interest in regards to what things may happen far as beyond their thinking. And most of them kind of feel like, well, life, you live it the way you live it, and you know whatever happens happens. Whereas in Japan, from my time that I spent there, they really have this belief that, like you pointed out, things just don't happen by chance. Um, they really believe there are certain aspects that come about through means of willing it into reality, I would say. Um, they 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 focus a lot on their intuition, and they really read the details of what goes on around them. So, you know, my girl was telling me how you can have a conversation with someone, and even though on the surface, the conversation may seem light and lighthearted and whatnot, but deep down, there may be some hidden undertones that if you're not paying attention, you may not be able to catch it. And so they really take very high regards in, like you said, intuition, the details, because they truly believe that those small little things will play a big role later on down the road.
Exactly. That's something that I preach a lot because I see it in the investment world. Typically, it's that 80/20 idea that you can take a small position, or you can look at a handful of different investments, and those investments at the moment they may not be producers, but over time they can lead to very outsized results. So the big things have small beginnings, and I think that this is something that Japan is especially honed in on, because in a lot of instances it was basically life or death. If you didn't pay attention to the finer points of etiquette, you might get your head cut off or something
Oh
similar.
yeah.
Uh, but or if you're a warrior, right? You mess up, that may be it. You may not come home again. So um, I'm always impressed by the high level, like you mentioned, attention to detail, really reading between the lines. Like sometimes young Hinata, they're really working her at the gig because it's like a virtual environment right now. So there's a lot of work that comes with it, like extra
Mm,
work that normally they wouldn't have to do. So all the Japanese ladies are like kind of stressed.
mm.
Um, so even when we have those conversations, I'm kind of like, okay, well, this really isn't about me. This is about, workplace politics or whatever. So But yeah, I mean, success is how well are you at reading between the lines? I think that's the secret sauce between success and failure, and that's going to be in a lot of different spheres.
Very true. Very true. And I definitely will say, for many people that's listening in, whether male or female, um, one thing that our good friend Mr. Logic Finest would say, as above, so below. And so I would add to that would be careful in what you think about yourself or think about your environment. Because if you keep believing some negative aspects of it, don't be surprised if it comes into fruition. And that
Exactly.
and that's why, I truly believe with the Japanese, they definitely take that into high regard in, in making sure that, hey, whatever you putting out there into the universe, make sure it's good things. Otherwise, you put some bad things in, you might run into something superstitious, as we're about to read up on the things in this list.
Sold, honey.
All
Yeah.
right. So the first list coming up, this says the 15 nightmare-inducing haunting places in Japan for a daring trip in 2020. I won't say it's nightmare-inducing, a lot of these places, but it will make you raise an eyebrow. It's a good read up, and it's actually some places where I myself, if I have a chance going back to Japan next year, I would definitely like to maybe go to some of the outskirts of these places, maybe not actually be there, but these are good read ups. And so, in light of this month, this is what this particular episode will be about. And we'll let you guys make your own judgments as far as, some of the underlying things about these certain places. And so it starts off by saying Japan is a weirdly wonderful country, from its unique food to cultural obsession with things like anime and cosplay. The country is spread over 6,852 islands, and each region has its distinctive environment and culture. One thing that unites the Japanese is their love for paranormal activity, and the country produces a lot of horror movies, TV series, books, and more. The inspiration for these come from real haunted places in Japan, and there's certainly quite a lot of them. So it says here we have chosen a list of haunted places in Japan that got us spooked and wanting to know more about them. These places are scary and secretive, that after knowing about them, you will want to take a haunted places tour in Japan. And so for this particular list, I'm actually going to start from the bottom and work way back up. Reason being is because they start off with the number 100 spot, which I feel like doesn't give it justice, so to speak, if we actually don't build up to why it's seen that way. But a lot of these places definitely they hold hold their weight in regards to what what could be seen as scary or whatnot. So let me go ahead and go to the bottom, and starting off the list is number 15, the Hiroshima bombing site. So it says no one has ever forgotten the Hiroshima Nagasaki incident in which the atomic bomb Little Boy, and they forgot to include Fat Man, destroyed the lives of around 140,000 people. The first attack took place at the Hiroshima Prefectural Industrial Promotion Hall, which is now changed to Hiroshima Peace Memorial. The place has been claimed to be haunted, as the people nearby have heard uncanny voices near the dome. Not only this, but there has been numerous incidents of electronic voice phenomena where you can hear the atomic bomb exploding itself. Isn't that a hair raising incident? Now, what I've also heard in regards to the Hiroshima Peace Memorial is actually there are some spots around the memorial where people's shadows from the bomb is actually still imprinted on the building,
Hmm.
which it shows you the magnitude of how powerful the nuclear weapon was when it was first dropped. In fact, they said the bomb exploded only maybe like 20 feet above the actual dome. But even then, just being in the epicenter, pretty much within a 5 mile radius, everybody was wiped out. And the only thing that was left of them was the shadows that were imprinted um, in the areas that they were at. So there were shadows on the sidewalk, there were shadows of people on the buildings and everything. Like it was really an interesting phenomenon that has never happened before that time.
Wow. I'm looking at some images. I didn't even know that part, but that's crazy. But when we talk about the nature of our universe, if we agree that light is basically the foundation, and then you have this nuclear explosion, um, yeah, I could see how that could happen. But yeah, that's insane. I mean, that kind of goes to show just I mean, honestly, like I see these countries, they poke at Japan all the time and they talk crazy about them and the war, this, that, and the third. I'm like, you guys need to leave these people alone because they don't know Japanese people like that. When they really decide that they're done with you, then you can't do anything. I mean, there's no forgiveness. They're not going to stop, you know. So if we felt like we had to drop a bomb to get them to surrender, then that just goes to show, we already knew that it was going to be so much more killing and death. So yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, and like you said, it really highlights the the devastation when this bomb was dropped. I can only imagine if you was to get close to the building and had a chance to touch the wall or touch some sort of artifact from that time, you will probably feel a great sense of energy of what happened that particular day. And so it doesn't surprise me to hear that there's people who claim they hear voices or hearing people screaming, or as they pointed out in the electromagnetic voice phenomenon, they could actually hear the bomb itself going off. So to me, that just highlights so much energy that was entrapped that day, um, because so many lives were affected, and even the military men who dropped the bomb, they said their lives were never the same since that day.
Mm. Can you share more about that? I mean, did they?
Um,
Obviously that would play with your conscience quite a bit, but
yeah. Actually, there some of the airmen who were a part of the mission to drop the atomic bomb. They said that they would have nightmares of they would hear people crying and whatnot, and they couldn't explain as far as why they keep hearing these crying or having these nightmares about it. And
mm,
so one of them actually believed that the souls from the victims have actually come back to haunt him,
mm,
because of the atomic bomb. So
yeah.
it
Well,
it's interesting.
very interesting. I don't know. I just feel like here lately, one of the things I've been kind of thinking about is this concept of energies and kind of the natural world and quantum physics and quantum mechanics, how it all kind of fits in. And yeah, I mean, who knows what happened to reality when that bomb actually went off? Maybe there were after effects that just maybe we just don't understand fully, what happened. You know, all kind of craziness could have resulted from that. So,
Very true. Very true. Well, next up on our list is a place that's actually on the outskirts of Tokyo, um, in the prefecture, not prefecture, but the ward of Akasaka, and it's called the Weekly Mansion. So this says, despite being a luxury hotel, Weekly Mansion in Akasaka is one of the horrifying places to spend your night in. Building number one in the hotel premises has witnessed several paranormal activities, like white mist coming from the vents, being pushed on the bed while asleep, and electrical appliances turning on by themselves. A woman claimed that she was even dragged on the floor of her room, and her back indeed has scratch marks, as she told them. Well, Japan has other beautiful places to stay at, so better look for other places. Now, when I heard this one, as far as a woman actually being dragged across the floor, I was just like, you, to me, it would be something if there was actually evidence to maybe if she had it on video. I don't know if this happened, in recent times or maybe back in the day. I don't know how old the Weekly Mansion is, but to hear that particular story, I'm thinking to myself, you must have really angered a particular spirit to have them drag you across the floor.
right? Was she complaining? Was she bitching? I mean, you never know. That's well, my whole thing is, I'm sure you probably had your own various encounters. I remember my grandmother's house. So when my grandfather passed, the bedroom that my grandmother and my grandfather shared for many decades, she basically turned that, I guess, into like a little shrine. Like, no, she didn't sleep in it anymore. She slept in this other room, and
Hmm.
I slept in their old bedroom one time, and I felt like I'm a kid, but I felt like there was somebody like standing over watching. So I mean, I didn't feel like fearful, so I'm fairly certain that if if that was what I was thinking about, it was not malevolent. Maybe my grandfather, perhaps, but yeah, I don't know. We black, so I feel like we don't really be look. I mean, we don't really look for trouble like that. So what I'm saying, like if you tell me, hey, this particular hotel and all this is going on, it's gonna be like, let's find someplace else to stay. I don't know. What do you think?
Nah, I definitely, hearing that, um, if I was coming to this hotel and the person working the register is like, oh yeah, by the way, just be careful in such and such room. We actually had a guest who was actually dragged by an unknown force. At
Right.
that point, I'll probably be like, okay, here's my keys. I'm gonna probably look for a non-violent area,
Right.
so I can spend the night.
Because hey, yeah, hey, we're evolved gentlemen, and this, that, and the third. But some things never change. So I'm like, Negroes are trying to live, so we have this acute sense like danger, danger. I don't know if I'll
Mm-hmm.
be doing all that.
Nah. I mean, I will go there to maybe visit and investigate, but definitely not to spend the night. Like, nah, that I need to get some sleep, and I don't want to be fighting something that I can't even see.
Right. You know what I'm saying? So one has to wonder.
Oh yeah. All right, coming in at number 13 is the Ikeko Middle Gate, the cursed concentration camp. It says during World War II, the U.S. Navy Ikeko Housing Detachment was a concentration camp where thousands of Korean and Chinese prisoners died due to forced labor. There are three gates that separate the place from the Japanese: main, middle, and back gates. Guards on their duty on the middle gate have often heard footsteps, voices, and visions of Japanese soldiers with no legs. The frightening sight has sent a chill through the spines of many guards. Now, from what I understand from the Ikeko Middle Gate, it was actually a Japanese prisoner of war that they used to house a lot of the Koreans, Chinese, and even a few Americans that were actually caught on Japanese soil. And so after the war, the Americans obviously took control over it and they converted it to their own type of concentration camp, holding camp for the time being. Now, it I don't know as far as if there was any major deaths that occurred at this camp. Wouldn't surprise me if it did, but to hear that the guards there would actually see Japanese apparitions kind of leads me to believe that there may have been some retaliation from the prisoners of war against the Japanese at the time that may explain why they're seeing, that sort of energy.
Yeah, that's certainly possible because, you know, oftentimes, and I don't want to get too controversial, but atrocities were all over the place. We'll just say that. And
Oh,
so,
yes.
yeah, there's a lot of atrocities, a lot of get back, so I don't doubt that. And like I mentioned earlier, like Japanese people, I love them to death, but they don't know how to let go. So even if they have to come back beyond the grave, they're not going to let it go. You know what I mean? So um, I often hear that the spirits. I don't know if you ever watched like the anime Doom Megalopolis. It's like one of my favorites. It was like the
Yeah, I've
old
heard.
school Streamline Pictures.
Yeah, I've heard of it. Mhm.
Okay, so they have a scene where like the monks are like, "Spirits protect us in this time of need. Spirits protect us." I always remember that particular scene because the exorcists were like trying to take down the main evil dude. So I mean, normally, like from what I hear, spirits are there or they linger where like their their needs are not met or they're they're not satisfied with their outcomes. So so maybe we don't have exorcists on the U.S. government payroll, but they might want to invest in something like that. So
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, just to kind of talk about the what you mentioned about the Japanese not letting go,
they don't know.
for the brothers out there, let me forewarn you. There's actually a place on our list that's going to be coming up later on. Whatever you do, don't cross a Japanese woman the wrong way. Try to be peaceful about your doings because if you do, there have been many cases that I've read where men have been hunted beyond the grave.
Mm,
And there's a particular story coming up from one of these haunted places that, eh, like I said, be very careful. It
you
even made
know,
me kind of. I was gonna say it even made me kind of look at my girl with a raised eyebrow
right?
in some form of fashion.
The people's eyebrow.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, man. Because listen, like young Hinata, she's down for me. She's been through this, that, and the third for me. But the only reason I'm still alive today is that I'm more technically skilled with the blade than she is, and I'm faster. You know, if if the circumstances were reversed, I don't know. It would be tough. So anyway, we'll leave it there.
Oh, tread lightly. All right. So coming in at number 12 is the Himuro Mansion, the Grizzly Murders. Now, for those of you that likes to play video games, the Himura Mansion was actually a event, or you could say a place of reference in the famous Japanese game called Fatal Frame. And yeah, when you kind of read up on the inspiration behind the video game, you'll see why. So it says here, just located outside of Tokyo, Himura Mansion is believed to be one of the eeriest places in Japan. The mansion has witnessed some of the bizarre activities like occultist practices and gruesome murders. According to local lore, the family in this mansion practiced the strangling ritual, Shinto, to seal off bad karma on Earth every 50 years. But the ritual got tainted as a lover once saved his maiden from being sacrificed. After this, the master killed everyone in the family and then took his own life. The ghosts of the family members still lingers in the mansion and tries to attract people so as to complete the tainted ritual.
Hmm.
Definitely a
Well,
no-go zone for me in this particular place.
yeah, no, I'm good. It's interesting. I mean, besides the grisly murder, you have the idea of the master of the house. So right away, you can see that this is vastly different than certain demographics, we'll say, um, where there is no concept of male leadership or headship. Unfortunately, sometimes, of course, that goes in a negative direction. And this is often used as an excuse to basically not have that male authority. But yeah, I just thought that was very interesting. But yeah, I'm not going there anytime soon because, it's one of those things that why ask for trouble?
Yeah,
I got enough problems.
I'm just like, wait. This is a place of an occultist that went wrong, and you want me to stay here? Nah,
Right.
I'm good.
I'm good. I'm cool. And it's not even, I mean, you come to brothers like us, we'll be like, we're good. And that's it. We're not trying to prove nothing to you. And, oh, no, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to prove that it's bunk. No, what I'm saying? Respect it. What I mean? Obviously, this is not a place you want to be.
Oh no, oh no. And after hearing as far as the local lore, I'm one where, especially at my time when I visited Japan, if the locals have a certain belief about a certain place, whether good or bad, I'm going to follow what the locals feel about it.
Right.
Because number one, this is not my home country, so I don't have no clue as far as most of the rituals, most of the customs. So it's a safe bet to follow what the locals try to tell you about it. And then two, like you mentioned before, Mr. Kitagakure, most black folks, once we hear that there's something bad that went down in a certain place, we're more inclined to just leave it be. We don't
Leave it
really try
alone.
to entertain. Yeah, we don't really try to
Right.
entertain it.
Certain folks, they'd be like, yeah, man, awesome. We're going to go in there. We're going to go in there. We're going to stay the night and we're going to film it. Nope, I'm good. I'm cool. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Moving on. Coming in at number 11 is the Gridley Tunnel. And this one is actually located in Yokosuka. Now, the story behind this particular place is interesting. So it says Gridley Tunnel is a single lane tunnel which is situated on Yokosuka Naval Base. It is believed that many years ago, a samurai was going through this tunnel to avenge the death of his lord. But on the way, his enemies caught him and murdered him in this tunnel. Since then, or excuse me, since the samurai failed to complete his mission, it is said that he has not left the place. His ghost is seen still on rainy nights at around 1 a.m. in the morning. If you ever come across this tunnel, would you dare go near to it? Okay, a former samurai killed in this tunnel because he was trying to avenge the death of his lord. And he's only seen on rainy nights at 1 o'clock in the morning. Again, no go for me.
That's going to be a hard pass unless, I bring like, special sacred equipment in order to do battle. But again, why ask for trouble? And with kind of that conversation we had on Bushido, I mean, that makes sense to me. It's one of those things that, there's many ways to die. And if you die in shame and regret and in your own blood and entrails, then I'm sure that, that's not going to be a peaceful ending and one that's going to be conducive towards not haunting a tunnel at 1 a.m.
Yeah. And as a samurai in training, I'm learning to have the utmost respect for those who have come before me. So I really see no need to test my courage going into this tunnel on a rainy night when it's past 12 o'clock. Now,
Right.
J.J. Wilson said he will do that. He will channel
He
his
would do
inner
it.
Jin Sakai, but more power to you, brother. I don't have that inner Jin Sakai yet.
JJ would have to learn Kujikiri and learn the mudras before he went in there to do battle, because you would probably need to invoke spiritual powers in order to make it out on the other side. So, I mean, it's one of those things that for those who are trained in those arts, maybe. But again, I'm not looking for trouble, so I'm good.
Same here. Same here. All right, so this next one is actually not considered haunted, as far as anybody dying or whatnot, but the Japanese still considers one of the scariest places in Japan. So it's called the Labyrinth. If you're looking for a haunted house attraction in Japan, but you want something more exciting than the Huistin Bosch, then head to Fuji-Q Highland Theme Park. The haunted house at this theme park is one of the best in the country and will truly leave you shaken. The house is based on a hospital theme and is inspired by a real hospital at the base of Mount Fuji, where a hospital harvested body organs from unwitting patients. It is said that these patients came back to haunt the doctors, and that is the premise of the labyrinth. It's 900 meters of pure gore, horror, and tricks that will leave you wondering if it's just an attraction or if the place is really haunted. Now, it's interesting they bring up this particular location. From what I've been told, haunted house attractions in Japan, they definitely have different feels to it compared to haunted house attractions here in America. They say that really in Japan, their haunted houses, they really try to get the audience more involved. So if you can imagine, say, like you're in a situation like what we have here, the escape room, and then you combine it with particular, horror themes and whatnot. That's what those haunted house attractions are like in Japan, from what I've been told.
It's interesting because I mean, like I took young Hinata and one of my really good buddies from college. So he and I and young Hinata, we went to an American haunted house, and
Mm.
they walked around like nothing was happening. Like they just weren't scared. Young Hinata was kind of looking at people like, "What are they doing?" And then my buddy was just walking around, like nothing was going on. So for Japanese people to be shook, it has to be industrial hardcore horror for them to get unrattled because I just stopped going because young Kinata, I mean, we would go on occasion, but she was just
Mm.
like, "This is not scary. What are they doing? Look at these costumes." I'm like, "Okay, you're killing the whole thing." So we stopped going.
Well,
So yeah,
I was gonna say it makes sense because you know Hinata comes from a bloodline of samurai warriors, so you really have to as they say, shake them out of their boots to
yeah,
really consider it as a scare tactic. And same thing with some of my buddies too. They went to some haunted house attractions here in America, and when I talked to them about it, it was like, it was so and so. It wasn't something that really is gonna make me sleepless at night. And I'm like, dang,
yeah.
that's
They
definitely some hardcore.
yeah. You gotta kick it up to the highest levels. And you can even see that like for a little bit like Japanese horror was like a big thing, like Ringu, like The Ring, and what was the other one?
The Grudge, something
The
like that.
Grudge. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. And really, I thought those were pretty good examples because like in Western horror, usually there's an out, right? If you wave this object, or if you move the body over here, or if you make it until dawn, you know what I'm saying? But in those kind of movies, man, there's no hope. You're just done, you know. It's over.
Ah, very very true. All right, so coming in at number 9 is the Triple S Curve. This is actually another tie to a World War II site. It says, in case the haunted places in Sasebo, Japan don't scare you enough, then head to the Triple S Curve in Okinawa. Okinawa suffered extensive carnage due to the World War and led to the deaths of many Japanese soldiers. It is said that these soldiers came back to haunt this part of the road, and visitors often feel a surge of nausea, dizziness, and the feeling of someone's hand on their body. Several Japanese paranormal TV hosts have visited the place to record this phenomenon. It's all sorts of spooky you don't want to feel on the road. Now, this one, I definitely can see some sort of phenomenon going on because Okinawa, if you definitely read up on the islands partake in the World War, Okinawa was deemed one of the bloodiest battles in the entire Pacific War. The only incident that rivals that in regards to deaths was the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Otherwise, by itself, Okinawa had more bloodshed than any other battle within the Pacific. So I'm not too surprised to hear that there's certain areas on the island where the Japanese kind of feel it's stigmatized because of its gruesome history from the past.
Hmm. Yeah, I can see it. I mean, I think the common vein, no pun intended, is the common issue is, pain, blood, you know, um, malevolent intent. So in Nimpo, we talk about saki. which is like the killer force or the force of the killer. So, if you're really adept, you can kind of feel it and react to it, kind of move your body appropriately.
Mm.
So, yeah, all of this makes perfect sense. And I guess this is a tribute in a way to just their warrior spirit, because I'm just going to be very honest here. Um, they were just whooping up on everybody else like it wasn't nothing,
Hmm.
So it's amazing how far, we've come, America and Japan, because um, if it wasn't for the US, no one else was going to take them on, and nobody wanted those kind of problems anyway, because I mean, they're just such fierce warriors, everyone, men, women, children, old people, you know. So yeah.
That's true. That is true. And like you said, when you read up more on that particular battle, I mean, the Pacific War itself. If you were to ask historians, this is a little side remark to the War Room series on YouTube that I do off to the side on the other platform. Um, you have some historians who will kind of agree that if you were to look at the east eastern front as far as with Europe versus the Pacific front, they would consider the Pacific front to be the most bloodiest events within World War II. And that was because the Japanese truly believed in fighting to the death. During that time leading up to the war, they really honed in their fighting spirit in a modernized capacity. And so we're talking about a country where even the women are trained to use bamboo spears and home appliances as weapons, and even the children in schools are taught how to use knives and other forms of weaponry because they were all ready to die for the emperor.
Yep.
Um, did it make it right? It depends on who you talk to. To me, I respect the Japanese for that fighting spirit. They really were loyal to their beliefs in their country. It's just unfortunate that the nuclear bombs pretty much was kind of their reality check,
Right.
and it's unfortunate it had to come down to that. But again, it just highlights that the Japanese understood well before the war and from their fighting ancestry that they believe dying for a good cause is the highest form of honor one could have. And
Mm,
so, not many warriors outside of East Asia had that type of understanding.
yeah. Yeah. Because I feel like that, like in Western societies, we've got the Geneva Convention and, all this and that, which I think is, again, I'm not criticizing it. I think it's good. We should try to avoid war if we can. Um, but yeah, in East Asia, all bets are off. You make them mad, you got to deal with it, and they're coming for your neck, so, just got to be ready for it.
Very true. All right, coming up on number 8 is another haunted house attraction. It's called the Huis Bosch, and this one's actually located in Nagasaki. It says the Huis Bosch is a theme park that is a tribute to the Japanese Dutch relations. While the theme park is a beautiful place with tulip fields and happy attractions, it's also home to one of the most haunted places in Sassubo, Japan. A popular haunted house attraction, it uses technology to enhance the horror experience for its guests. It uses virtual reality to make things come alive and make you run with fear. It has several themes like the abandoned hospital, mansion of Japanese ghost stories, digital horror house, and prison ward. Keep your wits about you at this crazy haunted house. Now, again, this speaks to the innovation of the Japanese because to date, I can't think of any haunted house attraction here in America that uses virtual reality. That is some next level spook fest.
I know, right? But see, that's what I love about Japan. That's some people are like, Kitty Jones, you're a weeaboo, you're this, you're that. I'm like, this is the life that I live.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in it. It's not going away. But yeah, I love Japan because like I used to think that like drug use was pretty rampant over there because of just all the like the just they'll take a concept and completely flip it. And it's like, wow, why didn't I think about that? Or how come I didn't, you know, I don't know. That's just one of the great things about the culture. Now, sometimes it kind of, it's kind of like, okay, well, this is going a bit too far. I mean, that's kind of rare when that happens in my view, but yeah, that's what's great about it. And sometimes I think that Japanese people they get maligned. I don't know why. Some people like to think that Japanese people aren't creative. Are you kidding me?
Really? I mean, we
Yeah,
just showed a video earlier in the stream of Japan literally creating a life-size Gundam.
I
What
know.
other what other country is doing that at this moment in time?
Zero. Zero. None.
Yeah, I'm with you. Somebody saying Japan is not technically advanced. It's just like, okay,
I'm like, are you kidding?
you you have definitely not been outside the country. You
Right.
know, some people, even if they're not a fan of Japan, most people that I heard of be like, yeah, Japan has some pretty neat technology in and of itself in that country. So for somebody to say that Japan is not technically advanced in a lot of things, first off, here in America, and I'm definitely putting this out there, I'm still waiting to see when America is going to invent their own self-service toilet.
Never. That will never. That will never happen because it's a sin to have. Look, you've been on the toilet, right?
Oh
You
yeah,
you. Oh yeah. Okay.
oh yeah, oh yeah.
So the the level of cleanliness, the thorough nature of the toilet is such that it'll be banned. It'll never happen here. It's not happening. You gotta use 12 things of toilet paper and yeah, not happening.
For sometimes I think America is so backwards in its thinking, but that's the subject for another day.
Right.
Alrighty, coming in at number 7 is the Round Schoolhouse. This one is located in Hokkaido. It says scary apparitions, noisy ghosts, floating lights, irregular shapes, abandoned vehicles. Every paranormal activity in the book have been rumored to have happened at the Round Schoolhouse in Hokkaido. The school was built in a distinctive round shape in 1906 and was run like an elementary school. However, it was shut down in the 1970s and since then has been abandoned. Soon after, these stories of paranormal sightings started coming in, and several paranormal enthusiasts made a beeline to check out the stories. Many of them came back with troubling stories of things they saw and heard, and it is said that a few of them returned raving mad and talked incoherently. It continues to be a top spot in the list of haunted places in Japan. Now, this one is definitely, I want to say, has that feel of Japan because when I think of a haunted school, Now this is just me, from watching anime growing up,
Hmm.
but to me, hunter schools have just been tied to things that go on in Japan, like hunter schools here in America. Yeah, there might be maybe some places that they consider, something suspicious going on, but when it comes down to a whole school being haunted, that is definitely more of a Japan thing.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, every anime ever has either high schoolers involved, or there's a fight at the high school, or someone jumped off the roof of the high school, or the schoolhouse, whatever. I'm curious to know, like, what happened there exactly. I mean, was it like Ijime, like bullying, or was it, were there a few suicides in the building, or, I wonder how that kind of came to be, because if nothing happened there specifically, I've had some conversations with people who follow this kind of stuff, and perhaps you have some of these spirits that basically go to a structure because they
Mm-hmm.
want people to go there, like the other house that had the strangling the strangling ritual.
Yeah, yeah.
It seems like that sometimes spirits go to places where they'll get attention.
I haven't thought of it that way. That's actually possible. And for sure, this this would, yeah. I have to read up more to kind of see like what's the history behind this particular place. Especially in Hokkaido, we're talking about an area where there's a lot more greenery and a lot more forest like atmosphere compared to the rest of Japan. So I can only imagine you're having a structure like this deep in the woods. I don't know how far they are from the nearest town or city in that regard,
Hmm.
but just that atmospheric setup, it definitely would have you believe, okay, something eerie must have went down in this place.
Right.
Now,
Or maybe they were like summoning, spirits or demons or whatever you want to call it there. Maybe that people screwing around and doing that kind of thing.
hmm, yeah, we'll have to definitely maybe on a later episode maybe do further investigation to see what's going on at this particular school. But like I said, anything as far as like a haunted school, that is definitely like a Japanese thing.
Yeah, that's very Japanese. Yeah.
Very rarely, when I hear of something like this in that type of setting go on in another country. Now, this next one is interesting. So, coming in at number 6 is the Okiku's Well. And this one actually has a Japanese folklore to it. So, it says within the Himeji Castle, which is located in Hyogo, which is maybe a few miles from Osaka, is an old well with a very intriguing tale of love and tragedy. It is also one of the most haunted places in Japan, as it is where a ghost appears at night and screams at you. The
Hmm.
ghost is the spirit of Okiku, a young girl who served the samurai Aoyama Tessen. Aoyama loved Okiku, but his love was not reciprocated. In what can be termed as harassment today, he hid a valuable article and blamed it on Okiku. He offered not to punish her if she became his lover, but Okiku wasn't going to have any of it. She refused to accept, and in a fit of rage, Aoyama threw her into the well, killing her. This is why she can still be heard wailing in the silence of the night.
Mm. Well, Not that I'm going to go and like hang out and check it out, but that sounds legit to me. That's definitely something that can go down in Japan land.
Yeah, and to think that that's there at the Himeji Castle, which is already a very well respected place in Japan. Excuse me. When you look at pictures of the Himeji Castle, it's definitely a photogenic area. That's why when I get a chance, when I visit Osaka, I want to go to that particular place just to take pictures of the castle. Now, would I stay around at night to see if this Okiku's well is true? Nah. I'll leave that for the thrill seekers.
That's right. Yeah, no, I'm good. But in Himeji has the fighting festival there,
Mm-hmm.
so I like to get in on that. You gotta, strap on your loincloth and do your thing. But yeah, I mean, and that kind of shows like when it comes to Japanese women, they're not pushovers by any stretch of the imagination. If she wants you, she wants you, and she's coming to get you. If she doesn't want you, there's really nothing you can do. I mean, even if you kill her, it's like she's still going to get the last word. So you might as well just let it go and keep it moving.
Exactly. And yeah, especially in this case, it doesn't say what happens to the samurai lord who did that to her, but I can only imagine. Okay, you get upset because some girl doesn't want you, and in a fit of rage, you kill her, throw her in a well. It's, that that's definitely asking for something to come to you
Right.
in a dream to kill you. And if it's true about you know like as they say the Japanese woman's fighting spirit and
Hmm.
how they can be relentless, brother. Um, Best of luck. Like I said,
Right.
if you cross a Japanese woman the wrong way, you better start praying and
Hope.
have your higher level of thinking working for you, because
Right.
you may not get good sleep at night.
And the thing is, see, the thing is, like, to push a Japanese woman to that level, you really, really have to mess up, right? So you're going to
Mm-hmm.
be 1,000% guilty. That's the thing. Like, in our modern era, we have men, especially black men, catching a lot of crap for things that they may not have necessarily done or something that maybe, somebody else did or whatever. But um, when when a Japanese woman is that upset with you, you've really, really messed up. There's really no defense that you have at that point.
Oh yeah, a word of caution to that tale.
It's a lovely thing, but it can be terrifying at the same time. So just got
Very
to roll
terrifying.
with it.
Very terrifying. All right, coming in at number 5 is Camp Henson. This is another location in on the island of Okinawa. It says World War II created a lot of destruction in Japan and left behind many dead soldiers. One such place which has witnessed this is the Camp Henson in Okinawa. The camp is a United States Marine Corps base and supports over 6,000 Marines. It is said that a lone soldier appears in a blood-stained World War fatigues and asks for cigarettes from those nearby. These sightings have been widely reported, and even courageous Marines refused to stand sentry at the gate. This eventually led to the closing of gate number 3, where the soldier's ghost is sighted. Because of this, it is counted among the most haunted places in Japan. Now, I can only imagine you're a Marine on this island in Japan from nowhere,
Right.
and you're on duty for a late night shift. So you literally have to be on your pins and needles. And out of nowhere, some random dude in bloodstained clothes walks up to you. It's like, hey man, you got a lighter for my cigarette? Like,
Man, Phantom Clutch says he ain't afraid of no ghosts, but your boy Kitty Gakade, on the other hand, I mean, come on, man. Like, I sound like Uncle Joe right now. Come on, man. But like, are you kidding right now? Hey, I'm not mad at him. I'm not going to be out there like that because, you know, I think we talked about this like on previous streams, but like I was in a forest over there in Igueno, which is the historical home of the ninja. I'm walking around and I'm like, okay, I feel like, I've been here before. So, I've had my fair share of, you know, and I'm sure you had the same where you're kind of in country and you're like, okay, something is going on here. This is not the way things normally go down. So I'm not mad at him.
yeah, I definitely have been in scenarios where, or places where things just don't add up. And this goes in line with talking about trusting your intuition. When your intuition is telling you, okay, this should not be happening, or
Right.
this is definitely not a good idea. Like I said, we're talking about the Marines. This is one of the most hardcore warriors outside of the samurais of the old days. These are modern day hardcore dudes that
Right.
they gotta deal with in and everything. And you on guard late at night, you're supposed to deal with things that are supposed to be alive.
Right.
But what kind of training are you supposed to do when something that is dead comes to you and it's like, hey, I need a cigarette. You got one? And for what I understand, reading further about this Cam Henson, once you give that soldier a cigarette, he literally disappears right in front of you
Oh,
with
my
the
goodness.
cigarette.
What? So the cigarette's gone too, which brings up an interesting point. So clearly, we're dealing with some sort of quantum phenomena because you have an object that was material disappear all of a sudden.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know about all that. I'm not gonna be
Well,
out there.
well, I guess the soldiers, they complain enough to where the higher ups is like, okay, we don't have much evidence, but we'll take your word for it. So nobody's doing guard duty at that particular gate. So
Right.
apparently, to this day, gate number 3 is not manned by anybody. They probably maybe have security cameras watching that particular gate, and go about their business. But it's just like, yeah, what do you do when you're dealing with something that's not supposed to be there and it's not alive? I don't know.
Right. It's not in the manual.
Alrighty. Coming in at number 4, this is another haunted place in Okinawa. Okay. Okinawa is starting to be a hot spot. And this one is called the Nakagusuku Hotel. The decrepit hotel ruins of Nakagusuku Hotel is among the favorite haunted attractions in Japan. The hotel was proposed as a luxury resort and just a stone's throw away from Nakagusuku Castle. The hotel construction was opposed by a monk who said that it would disturb the holy site and graves in the area. But capitalist greed took over and the owner started building on it. After several mishaps and worker deaths, the construction was stopped. excuse me. In a bid to restart it, the owner promised to stay overnight at the hotel to prove it was safe. But instead, he returned talking crazy in the morning and
I'm crazy.
disappeared off the face of the earth. Even today, people can still see lights and feel the cold presence in the empty corridors of the hotel.
All right. Well, like JJ mentions, right away, if I see that, I'm not going in there. I'm not,
Yeah,
because we know how this story ends, and I ain't got time for that.
yeah, definitely. I if somebody asks me, it's like, hey, would you like to spend a night in this particular place? And I look at that picture or something
Like,
reference to that,
nope.
be like, brother, there's a reason why black folks say, ain't nobody got time for that.
Ain't nobody got time for that. Look. I mean, listen. We're not about the roots. Not about the roots Negro slave narrative over here. But I mean, I'm sorry, man. After 400 years of slavery, I'm not. I can't do it. I can't put my life at risk like that. I mean, but again, I mean, first of all, we've got red flags like a mofo. They talk about game and all that. I mean, first of all, ca- you know, the monk told you. The
Mm-hmm.
monk told you, like, look, man, there's graves, and we've seen the movie before, Poltergeist, right? I could even, like, back
Mm-hmm.
in the day before cable and everything, they did like cut off the TV at like midnight or 1 o'clock. So you could mess around in the '80s and wake up and see that your TV is like snow, right? So
Mm-hmm.
after Poltergeist came out, you had to hurry up and turn off the TV quick. But then the mishaps start, and then several workers die. I mean, this is not going to be a happy ending.
Oh no. And then the owner, I mean, if I was the owner, I would have been like, okay, I got things that are not lining up correctly. I'm having a lot of construction stops and people dying out of nowhere. You know what? This monk may be onto something. But
Right.
no, his idea is okay, I'm going to spend one night in this entire building by myself. And I'm going to prove to y'all there is nothing to fear about this place. Uh, well, as it just said in this article, the man went insane. And from that point, he was never seen again.
That's the worst part of the whole thing. Like, what I'm saying? Like, where'd he go? Obviously, I don't need to be in there like that, because, I mean, again, we got to look at this from the perspective of Japanese culture. I mean, lovely people, super polite, go out of their way. But again, if you make them upset, bad things will happen, like in this case. So, I don't. I wouldn't even risk it.
To me, if a monk, which is one of the most peaceful individuals you will ever meet on earth, if a monk comes to you and says, hey man, you probably don't want to be around this area because it's sacred ground and there's actually people who have been buried there, I'm going to heed his warning.
Right.
I'm going to take him for his word because this is a person who deals with spiritual things on a daily basis.
Right. Right. And this kind of goes back to, especially now, right? Like, it's all about social media. You got your head in your phone and you're texting and all of that, but what you don't know will kill you still. There's certain spiritual principles at work, and that hasn't changed just because you got the iPhone 12 or whatever. So people have to take heed.
Very true. Very true. All right, coming in at number three. Now, this one is pretty interesting. And again, for you fellas out there, be careful crossing a Japanese woman the wrong way. You'll see why in this next one. This one is called the Oiran Buchi, the Wailing Women. It says men have exploited women since the dawn of time, and I would add vice versa. But the story of the prostitutes or the Oiran of Yamanashi still haunts people today. The Oiran Buchi Bridge, is counted among the scariest places in Japan. The tale goes that back in the 16th century, when the area had gold mines that were ran by the Takeda clan, who also ran brothels to keep the miners happy. After the Battle of Nagashino, the Takeda clan escaped from the area, but not before killing all the prostitutes so they wouldn't share the information about the mines. The clan members invited the prostitutes on the bridge and slashed the ropes. It is said that the wails and cries of the women can still be heard from the gorge below.
Wow. Wow. That's cold. I mean, on the one hand, it's like, you have to admire the Takeda clan. And I mean, they were a ruthless clan. And, that was a Sengoku Jidai, the age of the country of war. So, death was a regular thing. But still, I mean, you could have been like, babe, look, we've been doing this thing. Here's some gold oban. Go back to your village or something. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah, like I probably would have done the same thing. Like, look, I'm just need you to kind of keep it a secret. Now, what I'll do is Now what I'll do is I'll pay you a monthly stipend. Just hopefully you're not asking too much, but I'm just need you to kind of lay low and not talking about the gold mines. Be peaceful about it. And my experience, most Japanese women are very accommodating. So you don't really have to go out of your way, so to speak, to have them help you. They're more than willing to help you. But in this case, it was just like these dudes said to themselves, look, we just gonna round them all up.
Right.
Come on the bridge, and once they're on the bridge, cut the ropes.
Cut the ropes. That's like some Akatsuki stuff right there. That's like some boss level evil right there.
I mean, you that desperate to keep it a secret, you know. Now, I'm gonna say this. Yes, there's brothers on YouTube that talk about don't trust women.
Right.
Now, I will say there's some truth to that. But again, going with the theme tonight, there's just certain aspects with certain women, particularly in this case Japanese women, you don't want to cross them the wrong way. Like I said, I'm pretty sure there were other options where everybody can go their own way, nobody's dead and whatnot. But in this case here, it was just like, as they say, we're just going to, so to speak, screw it all. We just gotta kill them. I don't care how you kill them. They can't go around telling anybody our secret. I mean, it's like they was like some secret society or something.
That's, I mean, kind of going. It makes me think about the shadows in was it Hiroshima we were looking at? I mean, that fear, because I'm sure they were hurtling to their doom. I mean, I'm sure that fear and everything else just kind of burned into the ether. Because I mean, it's one of those things that and I think maybe this was a clearer understanding in ancient times. maybe not so much today, or maybe we understand it more in scientific terms, but actions have reactions, actions have consequences, and that doesn't go away, right? I mean, yeah, you murked all the hoes, but I mean, yeah, there might have been one or two that need to be eliminated to keep the secret, but all of them at the same time, I don't know.
It's yeah. May God have mercy on their souls.
Yeah,
Moving
yeah,
right along.
right. Next
Coming
up,
coming in at number 2 is the Inukane Pass Tunnel. We have another haunted tunnel on this list. It says tunnels can be scary places, even without the association of ghosts and ghouls. The dark and dingy structure are perfect for wrongdoings, and this is what happened to a young girl a few decades ago. The girl was murdered and was never laid to rest peacefully, and has been said to haunt the tunnel ever since, making it one of the most haunted places in Japan. A visitor to the tunnel will hear whispering and gibberish, but mostly hear the words stop, asking them not to venture further. Those who dare often feel a presence poking, shoving, prodding them, and it's unlikely they will ever cross the full length of the tunnel. Now, if this is speaking for Sigma Jones,
right?
if I'm walking down this tunnel and out of nowhere something tells me stop, no question asked, I'm going the other way.
Right.
I'll just have to take
Right.
the long way. I'll just have to take the long way to my destination.
Now I'm with you. And see, we're talking about the women, so it sounds like this is a rather polite spirit, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it doesn't sound like that people are going mad and and all of that. She's telling you what the deal is. Like, don't come down here. So, if I've got like Aichan in my ear talking about don't go down there, I'm like, okay, cool. I ain't got no beef with you. I'm turning around. I'm out of here. How? I mean, is this really this hard? I don't know.
But you got some individuals that be like, "Boy, I ain't scared of nothing."
Right.
I am the alpha and whatnot, so I'm gonna definitely go in and teach this ghost a lesson. Like, all right, man, you obviously have some expertise in spirituality that I don't know of, so more power to you. But my experience and my understanding, it's just some things you just don't mess with. So if something
Right.
telling me to stop, I'ma heed that warning.
Right. Right. Because first of all, I'm not seeing anybody. I'm not. I'm fairly certain that there's not a body associated with that voice. Yeah, I think we're gonna comply with that. And what's really interesting is that you need to have like an army of clerics and priests and monks and Miko shrine maidens in there to take care of these places. Where is the Exorcist squad? Where are they at?
If the Exorcist squad, if they are kind of like, we need to be careful with this particular tunnel and all, like I said, I'm gonna heed their warning, especially if I'm
Right.
in a place where I don't know much about the environment, and like I said, some random person's like, hey, don't go there, don't go down there. I was like, hey, you don't have to tell me anymore. I just need to get to such and such place. Is there a better route? And I'm pretty sure they'll show me a better route. I'm good.
I'm good. What's interesting is that you never know. As a foreigner, maybe the spirits will grab your butt. I don't know. Like, oh, we
Oh,
have a foreigner here. Let's touch his hair. I mean, I don't know. I mean, you do hear stories about that
especially
kind of thing.
yeah, especially if you're a tall black man
That's
And for
right.
a lot of
Yeah.
Japanese, you're the first black man they've ever seen before. Like,
Right.
and definitely we'll touch on this subject later on. But when you read the history behind Yosuke, the Black Samurai, Yasuke, the Black Samurai, there were a lot of Japanese that they had made like diaries and entry information about, wow, I've never seen this type of man before. His skin is darker than ours and everything, and he can lift so many kilograms and whatnot. So I can only imagine if your regular run of the mill Japanese have seen or met a black person before, if there's evidence of spirits, especially Japanese spirits, you will probably be a beacon for them
For
to
them.
appear.
Yeah. I don't need that drama in my life.
I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
All right, coming in at number 1, and this is a pretty famous place worldwide. It is the Aokigahara Forest, also known as the Suicide Forest. It says the thick, twisted forest of Aokigahara is eerily silent, and even sunlight finds it hard to weave its way through the canopy. Infamous across the world as Suicide Forest, hundreds of people have committed suicide in this forest. So much so that the government has placed information and cards everywhere about suicide prevention. But this forest has a reputation as amongst the creepiest haunted places in Japan for a long time. It was used to practice ubatsu, or the practice of leaving old women to die in the forest. And it is said that their yurei, which in Japanese means soul, still haunts the woods. Now, before I continue, definitely would like to say this. Anybody out there who, have thoughts about ending their life and everything, definitely, seek help and find somebody to talk about it and all.
Definitely.
There's things like this, life is precious, and, we want everybody to have the best for themselves. And even if things are not going so well for you, there are better days ahead. So definitely for anybody out there who's dealing with depression and all, we highly recommend definitely find a good source to talk to. There's hotlines of suicide preventions to help in that regard. But now,
Agreed.
back to the main subject at hand. So from what I understand, Aokigahara Forest is the second most popular place to die, from what I understand. The only other place that has more suicide attempts or suicide deaths than Aokigahara Forest is the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco.
Wow.
Yeah, I didn't even know that until I read up about it. But one thing I kind of read up about Aokigahara Forest, so it's actually located near the base of Mount Fuji. And it's actually a pretty interesting forest because they also call it the Sea of Trees. Because, excuse me, once you kind of climb up Mount Fuji, even like near its, midpoint from the hike, all you see is nothing but trees in almost every direction. And so it's an interesting place because they say when you go there, you have to be careful when you go hiking into Aokigahara Forest because the electronics, even a regular compass, it just doesn't work in the forest. And scientists say the reason being is because the ground of the forest is actually made up of volcanic rocks and ashes from Mount Fuji, being that Mount Fuji was once a volcano. And so because of the ashes and rocks, it creates its own electromagnetic field that deters phones and gadgets and even compasses. But the locals, they say the reason why electronics don't work there is because there are so many spirits, even from ancient time, that lurks within this forest.
Mm. Wow. Well, you know, I think that we could look at it and say maybe they're both right. So maybe there are physical, biochemical processes that, maybe trap souls,
Hmm.
or maybe the quantity of souls, if we want to put it in that perspective. Um, you know, Even though they're immaterial, they have to have some sort of energy field of some sort around them. So, maybe it's a feedback loop or something along those lines. I just feel like that there's room for the supernatural and the scientific. I just feel like maybe the scientific explanation is just an empirical observation of the environment, but how can you observe a spirit? I mean, maybe you could get the right tools or something. I guess what I'm trying to say is that um, for a long time I would have said, well, clearly it's a scientific phenomena and blah blah blah, whoop de scoop, and these people don't know what they're talking about. But now I'm not so sure. But that
Yeah,
doesn't mean I have to discount the science either. I'm sure there's a logical explanation, but I don't know what it is. So you're not going to catch me hiking around in that particular forest under any circumstances.
absolutely. And for me, even if I do hike, because I definitely like going out in nature and hiking everything, I'm only going to go on the designated paths. You do have, from what I've heard, they have some individuals that go very deep into the forest, and that's not recommended. But I'm like you. I feel that it's is somewhere in the middle when it comes down to science and then something that science can't explain. I
Right.
think in this particular situation or place, there's definitely something to where you could say hearing the stories and the mere fact that a lot of people unfortunately come to this place to end their life and all is definitely something that science can't explain everything. Like, you know, it says here where back in the days they practiced ubase, which is they will bring the elderly into the forest and then leave them there. Now,
Yeah.
if you listen to people from the oppositions, they'll be like, "How can you do that? How can you do that to your elderly and leave them out there to die and all?" Well, you got to understand, back in the days, especially in ancient Japan, they looked at things very differently. Um, they feel that the younger should have chance at life to continue living, whereas the older folks, even though they had much respect for the older folks, if they were becoming a burden for the family in regards to finances or just hard times, they didn't think twice about, hey, we'll give you a dignified way to die, but we can't live like this.
Right.
And that's just how they felt back then.
Yeah. I mean, the ancients, oftentimes, like, we moderns will kind of read our views back into those times, but we have the luxury of electricity and infrastructure and hospitals and roads and all that kind of stuff. So I mean, who's to say that um I don't know. I mean, would I do that to To grandma, probably not, but but
You know, this,
hey,
baby,
I
why
mean, that's
you
just how
doing
it went
this to
down back
me?
then.
Feel like, baby, why you doing this to me? Like, this ain't Japan, Grandma.
Right. It is what it is.
Yeah. Alrighty. So rounds up that particular list as far as the 100 places, top 100 places in Japan. Now we're going to look at a small, shorter list of 100 places in particularly in Tokyo. Now, again, this is one where I'm actually going to start from the bottom, work my way back up, because once you hear about these particular places, specifically around Tokyo, you'll probably be like, these places either you want to go check out for yourself or you heed the advice of the locals there and maybe just stay put. Just don't go there. I think for most people, when they visit Japan for the first time, most of them will probably spend a good amount of time in Tokyo, being that
Right.
it's an international city. It's very English friendly, so you don't have to worry about learning, not being able to learn much of the language. So it's a good starting point. But even then, there is some things from ancient Edo period, which was Tokyo back then, that you may want to heed the advice of the locals if they tell you don't go there. All right. So it starts off by saying, now the capital of Japan, Tokyo is a prefecture that is visited by a number of travelers every year. Famous for its cherry blossoms, shopping districts, cheap electronics, gleaming castles, and traditional culture. Tokyo also houses some of the eeriest places, which might send a tingling sensation down your spine. Japan is a peaceful place to live in, but paranormal activities have not spared this prefecture. So, if you want to spook yourself out, then head to the top 100 places in Tokyo. But remember to take a companion with you while visiting the scariest places in Tokyo. So, once again, I'm going to start from the bottom and work my way up. And not surprisingly, coming in at number 10 is the Akasaka Weekly Mansion, the same mansion where a woman was dragged across the floor.
Hmm. We're back.
Back at once again. So it says, according to the locals, Akasaka Mansion is considered as one of the famous haunted houses in Tokyo. Many people have witnessed paranormal activities like white smoke coming from the air conditioner and lights turning on and off on their own. In addition to this, a woman complained that someone dragged her in the room.
Mm.
Again, as I've stated on the last list, if I'm coming to a hotel and the receptionist tell me, "Oh, by the way, in your hotel room, we had a case where a woman was dragged across the floor and nobody was there." I'm gonna be like, "Here's the key. I'm gonna go elsewhere."
I mean, looking at that picture, I mean, it looks like there's like a lot of people in front of it. So, I mean, you do have kind of the thrill seekers and people who um, search out that kind of thing. And, my question is, the woman complained. I mean, who did she complain to? I mean, was it like the staff? Someone drugged me into the room. I mean, they told you going in. You knew what the deal was.
Something, and especially if the staff knew about this before the incident, I'm pretty sure they was like, "Madam, we warned you beforehand that this place have some interesting things that we can't even explain. So it's best that you don't bring attention to yourself." If you
I
know what
wonder if
I
they have like
mean.
a sign, like, warning. I'm pretty sure they do. Oshirase. I'm pretty sure there's like a disclaimer, ghost may or may not appear in your room.
I'd be like, look, we are not responsible if
Right.
you do not
For you getting
respect,
dragged.
yeah, if you do not respect the hidden locals of this establishment.
Right. Brings new
Uh,
meaning to getting dragged on Twitter.
indeed, good sir, indeed. Coming in at number 9 is the Zoshigaya Cemetery, one of the largest boneyards in Tokyo. Zoshigaya Cemetery is a place where people are unwilling to visit at any point of the day. Some people claim to witness faces and white hands appearing from the trees. 3 people have committed suicide at this place, and it is believed that their souls remain there and terrify lone wanderers. Owing to its history, Zoshigaya Cemetery is counted in the most haunted places in Tokyo. Now, it's interesting because so when I was in Tokyo, I actually went and visited a different cemetery where the famous Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto is cremated. Well, parts of his cremation is at. Now, this cemetery, Tamarayin, is a huge cemetery and is actually kind of more like a park than it is, a graveyard or a boneyard.
Hmm.
But even at that particular cemetery I went to, and it was during the daytime, it definitely had an eerie feeling to it. It was eerie, but at the same time, it was peaceful at least during the day. So I didn't feel like something was gonna jump out, but it was definitely something to where it was such a huge place where it was like, I better be about my wits. I don't know what goes on here, but definitely I can't just be willy nilly and just relax or whatnot because my intuition is like pay your due respects.
Right. Yeah. It makes me think about um, that because, I've been to places where things could have happened, potential is high, but um, yeah, I think if you're kind of on your P's and Q's and, you come correct, then I guess nothing will happen. That's been my experience. But yeah, I'm with you. Like someplace, I'm like, oh, this doesn't feel, or you feel things like that. Okay, well maybe I need to um, be mindful where I am. That kind of thing.
Yeah, that is true. In a place like this here where you have faces and white hands appearing from the trees, as soon as I read that, I'm like, is this some sort of Inuyasha reincarnation?
Hmm.
Like, you know, faces and hands coming from trees. The only thing I can think of remotely similar to that is, some of the bad guys that Inuyasha and them fought in the series. So it's like, hey, maybe this is where they got their inspiration.
That's a good point. Before I don't know if you watch Nombidi Japanese Miyaguchi, I think that's what her name is. So she's a fairly new YouTuber,
Mm.
Japanese lady, and she basically her whole thing is, she'll like teach Japanese while playing video games. Well, she did a video about yokai, which is definitely worth checking out. Let me
Hmm.
find her real quick, but yeah, like when I watch stuff like Inuyasha, I'm like, yep, they took it from this place and this place. Because Takahashi Sensei, she's about her old school Japanese folklore. I mean, she's basically like presenting it to millions of people all over the world, well, billions, I guess, if you think about it.
Mm.
But yeah, a lot of that stuff comes from that traditional folklore. And let me find her channel because I think it's worth watching. Yeah, there we
Okay.
go.
All right. Well, while doing that, I will move to the next place on our list. And this one, I think you will find this next particular place interesting. So coming in at number 8 is the Masakado grave, or Masakado's grave. So this one has some ancient ties to it. It says another haunted place in Tokyo is Masakado's grave, which is situated in the financial district of Tokyo. This is the resting place of Taira no Masakada, an angry samurai rebel from the Heian period. His, I think they meant to say, decapitated head did not decay for nearly 3 months, with its eyes rolling in the sockets.
What?
The head mysteriously, check this out. The head mysteriously catapulted from Kyoto to Tokyo, making this site one of the spookiest places in Tokyo. If any worker disturbs the grave, either risk accident or death. Are you brave at heart to visit this grave?
Wow.
Now, I definitely did some reading up on Taira no Masakado. And believe me, he definitely was an interesting samurai. In fact, some in Japanese folklore, they consider him as the first samurai of Japan. And from my understanding, he was actually rebelling against the emperor at the time. And so the emperor actually put a bounty on his head. And one of Masakado's cousins decided that, I'm going to get the bounty for myself. So he ended up killing Masakado and presented his head to the emperor. And the emperor decided to put Masakado's head on display. And like the article stated, supposedly his head was on a stake for 3 months. And during those 3 months, Masakado was scaring people through his head, like, saying bad things about him and calling them out and everything and whatnot. And like I said, eyes rolling in the back of the head. So then, according to Japanese folklore, out of nowhere one day, the head literally jumped off the stake and started flying towards Edo, which is modern day Tokyo. It flies all the way to Edo, and the locals there, they're just astonished, like, look, it's a flying head. And when it lands and all, they take the head, they wash it up, and they made like a headstone grave for it, which is this same grave that we're seeing here. Now check this out. Since his death, there have been many accidents that happen in Tokyo that many people have equated to the curse of Masakado. There have been people who try to build buildings on the spot, and all of a sudden they either meet their demise, or the workers who were on the site met their demise and all work there stopped. And they even equate the 1905 Great Kanto earthquake to the curse of Masakado. And then, check this out. After World War II, the U.S. Army wanted to hit that area into a parking lot. And they said on day one, a worker was working one of those construction machines. The construction machine somehow turned over, ends up killing the man driving it.
Wow.
And so the United States decided that particular spot, we're just going to leave it as is. And,
well, I'm glad we had common sense to say, you know what, maybe this isn't a good idea.
I'm just like, look, if you have an ancient ghost that scared even the U.S. military to be like, nah, we'll just leave that area alone. That is pretty powerful.
Yeah.
And
Well,
even to this day, they said so. Right now, there's like a financial bank that's on the opposite side of the grave, and they said that nobody who works in that building has their back tur- turned towards the grave. Everybody's facing the direction of the grave. Like,
hmm. Also, in other words, to show respect.
yeah, and actually, Masakato even has his own bank account within that same bank.
Are you serious?
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
What?
I looked it up. I was like, wow.
What? What? Oh man, that's crazy. I linked that video with Noam Biddy. She's talking about various yokai. That is crazy. So whoever this person is or was, this person was in league apparently with big time spiritual forces. Something's going on. He's got a
Some
bank account.
Yeah, he literally has his own bank account, and I don't know what's the total that's currently in there, but they said that at one point it had like 900,000 yen. So
Wow.
it
Hmm.
definitely got some value.
All right. Okay. Well, I mean, fair enough. Because every time the flying head part, yeah, give the man what he wants. Give him what he wants.
Like I said,
Wow.
that's interesting. And if you ever been to the financial district of Tokyo, it is very vibrant. Is a very vibrant part of Japan. I've been there once. I haven't been deep into it, but for what they said, the grave is literally within walking distance from the station, and people who go there, they make sure even if they're walking past it, to pay their utmost respect before they go about their destination. I'm like,
Mm.
reading the backstories, I can see why.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good to know. See, this is the information that brothers need to know in advance.
Yes, consider this as us giving you brothers a helping hand, so that way you come to Japan and you respect the customs and the culture, and you
Right.
don't be like, I'm big and bad. I can do whatever I want. Okay,
All right.
you try that. You just hopefully you don't end up in the news.
Masakato ain't got time for all that, you know.
Mm-mm. If Masakato can make the U.S. Army think twice, I think you better heed that warning too. Alrighty. Coming in at number 7 is Iredo. Iredo. Popular as the Hall of Repose, Iredo is the place where people took refuge during the I think it meant to say Great Kanto earthquake, which occurred in 1923. This is the same earthquake that's been acquainted to the curse of Masakato in the previous list. These refugees were burnt to death at this place. Moreover, the site also served as a crematorium for around 38,000 bodies. Not only this, a Buddhist style memorial hall was constructed in 1931 at this place to pacify the victims of the Second World War. People walking nearby have not only heard uncanny noises, but also witnessed paranormal activities, due to which Iredo has also been included in the list of haunted places in Tokyo. So, this was interesting in the fact that it serves two purposes. It's actually a place where you could say they do crematoriums, from what I've
Hmm.
understand, and it also serves as a memorial for both the victims of the Great Kanto earthquake and victims of the Second World War. Um, it's interesting because I haven't too long was watching a Godzilla movie, and it was one where Godzilla was actually fighting off um, these three ancient monsters that actually were trying to protect Japan. Well, come to find out, Godzilla for some reason took on all the souls of those who died in World War II,
Mm.
specifically from Japan. And those souls came back to hunt Japan because they felt like modern day Japan had forgot about them.
Oh.
So
Huh.
it kind of reminds me of this place where there's a memorial set in place to make sure that people don't forget the victims of the Second World War.
Mm. What's interesting is that in my in-laws' place, so they have a kamiza, and I think my mother-in-law, I think she still does it daily, or she may have cut back to maybe once a week, something like that. But
Mm,
basically, so my in-laws are the head of the clan. So it's their job, and specifically my mother-in-law's job, to basically deliver offerings to the spirits. So she'll do that like around noon or something like that, like sake, some rice, things like that.
mm,
And they do, to remember their family ancestors and stuff like that. So, uh, and I find that that's very similar to kind of what they do in Africa, where you honor the ancestors, honor the spirits, things like that. And that was fairly common in the ancient world. So now, of course, we live in 21st century postmodern, post enlightenment societies where people don't really think that way. But places like Japan, that still goes on. So that's interesting that they kind of had that in the Gojira movie, because it sounds like that if you do have souls that are maybe trapped in this realm or whatever,
mm.
they would need assistance in that way, and if they don't get it, then there's gonna be drama.
Yeah, definitely. I'll put it like this: if Masakato can still make things happen beyond the grave, I can definitely say, the Japanese have high regards to their ancestors and those from the past that they keep in memory. To me, I'm just like, you know, don't forget about them, for if you do, they're going to make sure that you keep remembering them in
Right,
some
one
form or
way, one way or
fashion.
the other.
Oh, yeah. So, coming up next at number 6 is the Sunshine Building. Once the tallest building in all of Asia, Sunshine 60 is a huge entertainment complex located in Ikebukuro. 7 criminals from the famous Japanese War were executed on this site. Not only this, many paranormal activities like strange apparitions occurred during the construction of this building. In the evening, people can spot strange fireballs floating around this mall, which makes it one of the scariest places to visit in Tokyo. So, from what I understand, Sunshine 60 is actually built on the former prison grounds of the Sugamo prison.
Hmm.
And for those who study World War II, Sugamo prison is actually the same prison where they held um, famous Japanese war criminals like Hideki Tojo for their
Mm.
trials and whatnot. And so a lot of them were executed on the exact grounds for which that building stands upon. So again, this is another one of those historical World War II connections to where um, you have some people who were convicted of war crimes, and because of their convictions, they were executed, and now their spirit, unless it's been given a proper burial or proper respect, they continue to hunt the spot where they were killed.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the theme that we're seeing. And so I think sometimes, like we have the prohibitions against murder, unjustly taking people's lives. Some people like to think of it as a um, kind of a moral thing, like an ethical thing. Like it's something that you shouldn't do because it's bad, and that's the end of it. But one could argue that you don't necessarily want to get caught up with killing a bunch of folks because there are ramifications outside of the normal, the mundane, I guess, for doing that. So, there's always repercussions when lives are taken.
Yeah, and it's something you mentioned that because during this time when the Sugami prison was around and they were using it to house the war criminals, there were some on the American side that wanted the emperor at the time, Emperor Hirohito, to be executed because
Hmm.
they felt like he could have stopped the war, being that he was the emperor. Now, when you read up from the historians' um, perspective, what kept Hirohito from being executed or being trial for that is because um, General McDouglas, who at the time was the supreme commander of all of Japan, he understood that if America would go on and put the emperor on trial and even convict and execute him, it would cause a massive uproar amongst the Japanese that could possibly restart the war.
Mm.
And so McDouglas felt like it was better to keep Hirohito alive and keep being the state figure of the entire Japan than he was to be convicted. Plus, it turns out, the emperor doesn't have much power in regards to controlling the politics and the status of governments in Japan. He was just there as a figurehead. So
Right.
that
He was
helped
a
to keep,
symbol. Yeah.
yeah, that helped to keep, the emperor from having to go to trial and whatnot. But to me, how it speaks of again the spirituality of the Japanese. The fact that if their emperor was killed, then you essentially have destroyed their identity as Japanese. And from that point, it was kind of like it would have been a free fall.
The other thing I'm thinking about too is that so the emperor is like a priest king. So
Mm-hmm.
he also has various ceremonies that he does, like, the harvest and there's like atonement. I think twice a year the emperor does like atonement for, the sins of the nation and this and that. So if you take
Mm-hmm.
out the emperor, then there's nobody that's really quote unquote authorized to perform those services. So then, who's to say that, we take it a step further? Who's to say that, these particular, ancestral spirits just rise from their grave, like what you call it, altered beast, and just start, causing a ruckus? I mean, that might be something to think about too.
Yeah. If anything, I applaud General McDouglas just thinking, beyond the whole war and the war crimes and everything. It's like, you know what? If we're going to keep relations good with the Japanese, let's keep the emperor in place. And to me, that was probably the best decision they made post-war, because now we have great relations with Japan, and I'm gonna be honest, if it wasn't for that decision, I may not be able to hang out with Miss Kagome.
Yep. No doubt, no doubt. So speaking of which, well, no, we don't want to provide any Yasahime spoilers, so we'll let the audience watch that for themselves. But hopefully, Kagome will make an appearance relatively soon.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, definitely is. For those who have not caught on to the sequel of Inuyasha, please go and watch Yashahime. It the build up of the storyline in and of itself is definitely it brings back good memories of Inuyasha, if I do
That's
say
right.
so myself. All right, so coming in at number 5 is once again the Himuro Mansion. So the Himuro Mansion in Japan is popular around the globe for the infamous Himuro family murder. The family which owned this mansion used to practice a cult, but the ritual got tainted when a lover saved his lady from being sacrificed. This made the master kill himself after killing every family member. It is said their souls still linger in the mansion and try to entice people to complete their ritual. People living nearby have heard some eerie noises and screeching voices, due to which they stay away from the Himuro Mansion. Again, talked about this on the previous list. Any type of reference to a place where there was practice in a cult and that a cult went wrong, I'm staying put. I'm gonna go somewhere else
Right,
to hang
because
out at night.
there's no telling, because they were, I mean, obviously they were murking people on the regular over there, so they probably unleashed
Mm-hmm.
all the powers of hell. So I'm all right. I got enough demons to fight personally. I don't need to go out and find new ones. So there's that.
Brother, I couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah, I'm good right now. So
All right, coming in at number 4 is the Doriodo Temple. In 1963, the Doriodo Temple witnessed its first murder when an 81-year-old woman got robbed and then killed on the temple grounds. The temple closed after this incident, and people stayed away from the temple. Later in 1973, the body of a missing college student was found near the temple. Her professor killed her, then murdered his own wife and children before committing suicide. In 1983, an arsonist lit fire to the debilitated temple exactly after 10 years. To avoid any mishaps, nobody dared visit this place again. Now, I kind of read a little bit about at least the case with the college student that went missing in 1973. So, the backstory on that was this was a young girl who was studying at the local university there in Tokyo. And kind of like with a lot of these romance type of tales, her and
hmm
the professor kind of had something going on. Well, she wanted to take things to the next level,
right,
but him being a respected professor, he couldn't do that. So one night, he invited her out, I guess, to talk or whatnot, and he pretty much set her up to be killed. After he killed her, he then went on to put her kind of like in a shallow grave near the temple grounds and just left her there. Well, come to find out, the man went insane because the missing girl started hunting him in his dreams.
Wow.
And it drove him so mad that he went on to kill his wife and his children, and then he ended up committing suicide.
Mm.
So, again, as I warned the brothers, be careful crossing the wrong Japanese woman.
Now, based on those details, so what probably happened is she saw the professor and she said, oh, Sugoi, he's a professor. I respect him, blah, blah, blah. She was probably fine. So she probably stepped to him like, what it do. And professor is like, again, probably, I mean, he probably should just cut her off right then and there. It's like, sorry, but he didn't probably. And she was about him, I mean, listen, we've said this on many occasions. Japanese girl game is vicious. When they like you, there is nothing, apparently not even the grave, that can stop them. So yeah, because yeah, it is what it is. Because given our particular environment here, I think a lot of brothers just aren't used to raw femininity coming after them in that way. I was going to ask you also, I've been watching this new anime, what's it called? Hold on, let me see if I can find it. But basically it's like To the Moon and Back. It just came out on whatchamacallit, Crunchyroll or whatever. Hold on, let me see if I can. Because this kind of dovetails nicely with Tonikawa, Over the Moon for You. Have you seen that one?
I haven't seen the episodes yet, but I did see it come across my feed on Crunchyroll. I haven't seen it yet as far as like the main storyline, but hearing it from you, I think I'll go ahead and take a look.
Yeah, check it out, because I mean, this is exactly the same thing. So dude is like minding his own business. He meets this girl. This girl's all super mysterious, and all of a sudden she's like, "Yeah, let's get married." I'm like, "What?" I mean, listen, brothers just need to mind their P's and Q's. I mean, it's one thing to, oh, cool, these lovely Japanese gals are running up on me, but if you like, stimulate their interest, like you're if you think like, okay, well, I'm just going to lead her on and do whatever, and then I'm going to skate off, be careful with that, because that may not end up very well. You may end up burning in the temple someplace,
No, sir. And believe me, this is not the only story on this list.
What?
I can't believe I'm saying this, but there's actually one that's even worse than that.
What?
So,
let's hear it, brother.
Well, it's on a couple lists. It's in the top 3. So let us continue.
All right. Okay.
So coming in at number 3, once again, we have another tunnel. This one is called Komine Tunnel. So in 1989, a cannibal, as well as a serial killer, murdered a girl and left, I think they meant to say her, mutilated body near Komine Tunnel. A chill of terror ran through the whole nation after encountering this incident. The tunnel was then not frequently used by people. The government opened a new tunnel in 2006, and the old tunnel became a haunted place. People have witnessed the ghost of that girl, and thus no one dares to go near the Komine tunnel. Um, it's
Yeah.
something about these tunnels in Japan, like,
Well, because that's the place where you can do your dirt
mm-hmm,
without really being detected like that. Now, and this reminds me what I was going to say. The other one, the other part of that is like you notice how the people like, oh, this happened over here. We're going to stay away from it. That's
mm-hmm,
a very Japanese response. They're like, you know what? I don't need that kind of drama in my life. We know how this story plays out, so we're just going to stay away from it. So that this whole thing is like extremely Japanese reaction.
yeah, I was just about to say that. You, definitely, and this is why I say, brothers, heed the advice of the locals there. If all the locals are telling you, hey, that place over there, bad juju, and it's consistent across the board, heed their advice. Because
Yep.
believe me, the Japanese, when they all in unison tell you this place is good or this place is bad, trust and believe. They're not talking out of their rear end.
Trust and
they
believe.
know. They know.
Man, that's crazy. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, it's like, that's just those are just my people, like, at this stage, I'm married into the tribe. I got genetics and bloodline invested, so I'm not ashamed to call them that. But, you know, my people sometimes, Japanese people, they just sometimes they just take it to the extreme. Like if why you got to mutilate the body? Can you just, what I mean? So I don't.
No, I'm with you, and you know, yours truly. He's eventually going to be marrying into the Japanese family as well. So I'm already getting used to the customs and some ways of life over there and whatnot. Like to me, I was telling a brother on the back channel and all that. Yeah, my house, even though we'll be living here in America, my house inside is pretty much going to be a Japanese type of household. Um, when you step in, you'll pretty much be stepping in into another country. And to me, I prefer to have it that way for the sake of the children and all. But even for me, it's just like, yeah, it just goes hand in hand. If I'm going to marry into this culture, I might as well become part
Live
of
it.
it.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, live in America, of course. I mean, there's American stuff that goes down or whatever, but um, I mean, at this juncture, like I haven't forgotten where I've come from or anything like that. But
Oh,
at the
yeah.
same token, like if I were to say, okay, who do I spend the most time with? The vast majority of the time, it's going to be people who have Japanese ancestry and or bloodline. Those are the people I'm spending the most time with. So it's like that's how I'm living.
That is true. Same with me as well. Now, coming in at number two.
Oh boy.
And brothers, y'all better heed this warning, and you'll see why. Coming in at number two is the Oiwa Shrine, also known as Oiwa Inari Tamiya Jinja. This shrine was the home of a woman. It is believed that this woman was poisoned by her husband, but she came back as a ghost to
Hmm.
avenge her death. This story is based on one of the most popular ghost stories of Japan, Yatsuya Kaiden. People living nearby either try to stay away from the shrine, and if it's necessary to go, then pay their respects first to protect themselves from the wrath of Oiwa. Now, you can actually go on YouTube, and there's even live kabuki plays that talks about Yotsuya Kaiden. It's
Mm.
an interesting story. But here's the gist of it. So this particular story is said to have happened back in ancient Japan, right around 15th or 16th century. So you had a young woman, married woman by the name of Oiwa. She's married at the time, and I think believe they also had a baby. Her husband is a samurai, and so they were not living so well off, but somewhat pretty okay. Well, one day, her husband got in contact with a richer family, and this particular family, wealthy family, has a daughter who the samurai fancy.
Hmm.
But being a married man, he can't just up and marry this rich girl. So he hatched a plan to have his wife drink poison and pretty much die off of it. Well, that plan didn't go so well. So she drinks the poison laced tea, but it didn't kill her. If anything, it disfigured her face.
Wow.
And so, realizing that she wasn't going to die off quickly, he pretty much ends up killing her. And so she died a gruesome death. But on her death, she vowed that she will come back and haunt him. And so he goes on, marries the rich girl, everything's happy go lucky. But then all of a sudden, her disfigured face started to show up in many places around the house and even
Mm.
outside the house. And it started driving the samurai mad. Well, one day while he's with his new wife, she was doing something around the house and she had her back turned towards the samurai. Well, when she turns to face him, he's horrified because it's the face of his deceased wife. And so the samurai, it's an interesting story. So the samurai, thinking that his wife have come back from the grave, takes out his sword and slings at his dead wife, not realizing that it was just a mirage, and he actually ends up killing his new wife.
Mm.
And so he's driven mad, and the story goes that they say legend has it that he runs off into the mountains, and the locals see that he's being chased by a woman with a disfigured face, and he jumps off a cliff, and she laughs jumping off the cliff as well,
Mm.
and that, so to speak, was the ending of that story. So now they say the ghost of Oiwa haunts this particular shrine that they used to live in. And people who walk by, they make sure to pay their respects. And in fact, for what I've been told, in that particular district, they don't even mention her name. For
Wow.
they fear that if they say her name in any form of disrespect, it is pretty much a death sentence.
Mm.
So again, for you brothers out there, think long. See, this is one of the reasons why. Okay, when I did my interview this past Sunday with Soul Provider Speaks, and he asked me my thoughts on marriage. This is one of the reasons why I don't advocate for brothers to just willy nilly get up and marry and everything,
Oh, heck no.
because one, I don't think brothers truly understand, you know, the things that could happen to them if they do things the wrong way. And keep in mind, even though some of these aspects are universal with all women, certain women, you just don't want to go down that path.
No.
And as Sigma Jones and Kigakane Jones are speaking from experience, Japanese women, you do not want to cross the wrong Japanese woman.
Mm.
Now, thankfully, I haven't had anything too serious, and I'm pretty sure Kirigakure, you haven't had anything too serious, but we have seen glimpses of the wrong things that could go down the wrong path. And I think for a lot of brothers, you really need to think long and hard before you do something foolish. But
I think
you got the floor, sir.
a lot of brothers are like, man, I ain't messing with them Japanese women. They're not even gonna look at them now. But like, I had a friend of mine, one of my good buddies from college. So he was dating this girl. So he was like 25 and she was like 30 something. And she was like real, like this whole story with Oiwa's like, um, I can see like the possessiveness, right? Because like I said earlier, they lock on, boy, like guided missiles, and then they just hold on no matter what, So clearly, this man was in the wrong, and so he was guilty, fully 100% guilty, So yeah, that this sounds very much like what could happen with young Hinata. But like my friend, he was dating this girl, and she would just flip. Because I mean, I don't know what he did exactly. I don't know if he did anything at all. I don't know, but I do know that this woman tried to stab him, and he ended up breaking it off with her. But I don't know what happened. I think she went back to Japan eventually. But yeah, man, it was serious. My dude called me. He was like, yeah, she tried to kill me. I said, oh, that's a bummer, So, yeah, I mean, it's a great thing. Like if you find the right girl, she's into you, you vetted her properly, she's literally yours until your dying breath. But that also means that she's yours until your dying breath. So if you're messing up, then you're not getting rid of her even beyond the grave.
Brother, I couldn't have said it better myself. And that's why it's like, look, me and Kirigakure, we're telling you that, yes, Japanese women, when they love you, they are probably one of the most loyalist, if not the loyalist women you will ever deal with. Like when you hear the word ride or die, that pretty much personifies a relationship with a Japanese woman. They're ride or die. But with that said, it's a double-edged sword. You cross the wrong one, you too may be having a spirit lurking around your house or apartment that you can't get rid of. So think long and hard, fellas. Think long and hard.
Yeah.
All right, finally coming in at number 1.
That looks extremely haunted.
Well, you'll see why. Looks may look deceiving, but you'll see why. Coming in at number 1 is Toyama Park. So located in the heart of Tokyo, Toyama Park is one of the most haunted places in Japan. During the daylight, the park is lively and full of families and friends who visit this park for picnic. But at night, no one dares to even think of stepping in this park. People who have visited this park at night have encountered some grisly scenes and heard shrills of people at the park's hill, which is Hakone Yama. So, let me share with y'all why this place is considered the most haunted place in Tokyo. Well, Toyama Park is actually located near a medical center for Tokyo University. And this medical center was actually, it's been around well before World War II. Well, unfortunately, this place was also the home to one of the most infamous and diabolical medical places during World War II, and that was Unit 731. Unit 731 pretty much was a group of doctors who practiced experimentation on live humans. And they got their humans from prisoners of wars. So a lot of them were Chinese, some of them were Koreans. From what I've read, I don't know if any of American prisoners of wars were caught up in Unit 731, but the vast majority was Chinese and Koreans. Well, at the exact spot of Toyama Park, when these doctors created these experiments on live specimens, and those specimens end up dead or demise, they literally buried them at the park.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. And in a lot of cases, they said actually some of these individuals were buried alive. Come to find out that they were still living, even though the doctors thought they were dead from their experimentations. Well, right up to World War II, or excuse me, the end of World War II, they had to do a mass burial of all of the dead bodies and body parts that they were doing from these experiments. And they all were buried at Toyama Park. Well, even in today's time, some people who will go jogging at the park, or maybe, take walks and everything, sometimes they will dig up bones from within the park.
What?
So you can only imagine some of these unfortunate victims are still buried in the park to this day. So that's the reason why Toyama Park is considered the most haunted place in Tokyo.
All right. And that brings us to an important point that you mentioned earlier. Part of knowing a country and navigating successfully is to know what's going on the ground. So, like in this case, you don't want to be caught slipping in Toyama Park after dark, apparently. So, make sure you know where these spots are in advance.
Yeah, and it's interesting because if you look at the park during the day, it's all peaceful. There's children running around, people enjoying themselves. But when you look at this park at night, you can definitely tell there's something about it that doesn't add up, that doesn't feel right. And in fact, they said like the lights from the lampposts and all, at random they will just go out at night, even though there's electricity throughout the city, but just in that park it'll just go out. And the locals believe that the dead souls from the victims of Unit 731 pretty much are out looking for their graves because they haven't been given a proper burial. And so to me, if the locals are telling you, hey man, this place you don't want to be at night, heed the warning. Just heed the warning.
Well, I think we've we addressed a few things. Be mindful of spiritual combat. Be versed in spiritual self-defense. don't go to areas where the locals tell you not to go. If anyone tells you stop in a disembodied voice, you might want to listen, and be very careful when you vet Japanese ladies, because if she likes you and she's locked in on you, then you're she's yours, for better or for worse.
Yeah, and these are SYSBM brothers who are trying to help the young practitioners or even older practitioners who are getting interested in Japan. We're just here to help give guidance as far as what we know and what we experience. And I'm pretty sure there's other brothers which will later on get a chance, to interview. They will probably share the same sentiments as we do. But again, the Japanese women, believe me, is a double-edged sword. You treat them right, they will die for you.
Yeah.
Treat them wrong, and let's just say you will have a hard time going to sleep at night. But overall, the Japanese people are definitely some great people to learn from, their culture and their understandings of life, and how they treat all living things with respect.
Yeah.
To me, that's just something that they have embedded into their culture, and so you come with respect to them, they will treat you with the utmost respect, regardless of your skin color. And to me, that's why I believe a lot of brothers who travel to Japan have nothing but great things to say about that country.
Yeah. And the other part of that is too, they're not looking for trouble. So oftentimes people will say that, Japanese people can be standoffish, or some people will say Japanese people don't like foreigners and this, that, and the third. Firstly, everybody's different. Yes, there's culture, but different people perceive things and do things differently. And also, the other part of that is Japanese people really don't go out to look for trouble. Most of them, almost all of them. So I think that's something that, could definitely be, an acquired skill, because really at this stage of my life, I'm not going to places where I know that folks is going to shoot the club up. I'm not going to be, that Tommy Sotomayor rule where three of them will be, I will not be, or whatever it is. Uh, when there are more than three, I will not be, or something like that.
Hey,
I'm
I
just not
follow.
looking for drama at this point. So
Yeah, I follow the David Carroll rule, especially when it comes down to social gatherings. He said when you come to a gathering with a lot of men and you throw in drugs, alcohol, and big booty women, that is the recipe for disaster, and somebody is going to die.
well, yeah, that pretty much sums it up. So Uncle Dave.
Indeed. Well, that concludes this episode of the Black Ronin series. We will definitely look forward to the next one coming up next month. Uh, Good sir, Kirigakure Jones, any last departing words before we go?
Yeah, this was a good talk. I mean, our talks are always good, but it's nice that we can just have a conversation about a culture that we admire and love and appreciate, and talk about it in a constructive way, and have some good takeaways from it. At this stage of my life, and I have a channel. I used to do live streams, all that kind of stuff. Maybe I will again at some point, but I'm really doing more stuff offline. Enjoying life, moving forward, all that kind of stuff. And I think that ultimately the SYSBM Save Yourself Black Man lifestyle, which I represent all day, every day, is about living life, being the hero of your dreams, overcoming fear, avoiding haunted areas of Tokyo. I mean, what you can do is unlimited. So that's what I'm on. I'm about, moving forward, being constructive, making things happen, and having a great time.
Absolutely. And to me, that's where I'm moving in that direction too. I think at my age, even though I'm still in my late 20s and all, at my age, I'm starting to get to the point where, to me, the best things in life are the ones that don't involve drama. Unfortunately, we do live in a society that seems to drama is like the fuel that makes everybody for some people, they're able to manage that and so to speak get their day started. Me, nah, I like the peaceful things in life, and some things that may not have a positive connotation to it. I pay my utmost respects for them and just keep my distance. But yeah, I think for a lot of brothers who are practitioners of SYSBM or becoming practitioners of it, we overall just seek peace, tranquility, and the qualities in the things we do and the people we meet. And Japan is one of those places that, some would say it just has some sort of spiritual calling. And for many brothers that go there and experience some of the great things about Japan, um, it just keeps tugging at their heartstrings. And that just kind of shows that Japan itself may be one of those places that just has that type of supernatural power to where for any man, let alone any brother that goes there and has great things about it, they just never cease in not wanting to go back. And so, yeah, just thinking about it now, I'm just like counting down the
Mhm.
months until I can finally return. And who knows? Maybe it's some higher being or some spiritual intellect that's keeps beckoning me to return. But it's a good thing. Definitely not a bad thing. But but yeah, that's definitely something I think brothers will enjoy about this series, and going forward will be more inspired. Just the mere fact that we are showing a lot of aspects of Japan, both good and bad, that they will come to appreciate. And once they go there and experience it for themselves, they too will have their own experiences and just have a domino effect to where they will share those experiences with other brothers and will have even more brothers come through to want to experience Japan more and more. So to me, that goes beyond just, you know, everyday life. There's definitely a higher calling that I think a lot of us are really starting to come to terms with.
And brother Jones, if you don't mind, I want to piggyback off of that just real quick.
Yeah, go right ahead.
Um, I feel like, and I'm seeing more brothers expanding their consciousness. I feel like more brothers are now more willing to strike out on the path that they want to go down. And I feel
Uh-huh.
like the numbers are growing. So, I mean, sometimes it feels like, one step forward, two steps back. But I think that overall, based on what I'm seeing just offline and in real life, you have a lot of Black men that are living the way they want to live in a positive, good, and constructive way. Just going to the local park, I just see so many Black men with loving, caring companions and their kids, and just really enjoying life. I like to call them the hidden brothers because they're
Mm-hmm.
hidden. They're in the hole in the wall cafes, they're in the parks, they're on the hiking trails. I mean, they're just kind of really out of sight. Some people are asking, where are the Black men? And more brothers are just gone. They decided to go down their own path. So I'm filled with optimism. I've never been this giddy, if you will, because I think that there are more of us out there. We won't be alone for too much longer in terms of this path that we're on. So
No, absolutely. And I think eventually one of these days there might be an underground hidden badge to where, you walking down the street and you see a brother who have this badge and let you know he's a SYSBM practitioner. You nod, he nods, y'all go about your business.
keep it
But you
moving.
both
Yep.
but you both know you part of something very bigger than yourself. So
Right.
I definitely applaud that. So with that stated, I'm Sigma Jones. This is my co-host Kitagakure Jones. Until next time, this is the way.
This is the way.